Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Finance and Personnel Committee. This is Wednesday, February 7th, 2024 at 6:15 PM. First, item number one, call to order and the roll call. Leanne Stokes here.
Sean McAllister here.
Steve not here.
Thank you. Item number two, consideration and action on minutes from the previous meeting.
I'll move to approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
I'll second.
Stephen Knott made the motion and Sean McAllister did the second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, motion passes. Item number three, public input, limited to 3 minutes per individual. If there's anyone in attendance or online that would wish to speak, please say your name and your address, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. This is call number one on public input. Call number two. Call number three. Also, in attendance today is Sabrina Steger, Rick Niemeyer, Joanne Marcon, Dan Wick, Jared Halter, Chief Fleddy, Amy Franzen, Alder Diane Wolf, and our guest from Baird, Bradley Vigat. Okay, consideration and possible actions on the following items. Item number 4, the 2023 Omni Center financials. Sabrina?
Thank you, Chair. In your packets tonight, starting on page 1, is the Omni Center balance sheet, and then following on page 4 is the budget report for the Omni Center. And if I can draw your attention to page 6, this will show you that we are ending the year with a surplus of $68,486.28. One thing to note here, the surplus would be slightly higher. In 2022, we did approve to move dollars, to restrict dollars for 2023 regarding the branding for the Omni Center and some of the work that was being done with that. So that total dollar figure for 2023 was $32,795.29. So really, those were 2022 expenses. So the surplus would be even higher, but for accounting purposes, we have to record those expenses in 2023. So overall, good news for the Omni.
Okay, make a motion to accept and place on file.
Second.
Any discussion? Any questions? Hearing none. We can take a vote, and all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? The item number 4 passes. Item number 5, City of Onalaska General Fund Financials. 5A is the 2023 financials. Sabrina?
Thank you. So next in your packet, starting on page 7, is the balance sheet for the general fund. Following along on page 10 is the budget report for the general fund. If I can draw your attention to page 12. On page 12, this does give us our total revenue total for 2023. I budgeted revenues of $10,926,530. I'm happy to report that we had $12,149,806 in revenues. So therefore, we're seeing a surplus for revenues of $1.2 million. So overall, really great news for the general fund. A lot of this comes down to interest income and some of our permit revenues. So people are still building in the city of Onalaska and getting building permits and things of that nature. Those are our biggest outliers in regards to revenues. Then if I can draw your attention to the end of the budget report, which is on page 24. We budgeted $10,926,530 for budgeted expenditures. Our total expenditures to date is $10,822,817. Which means we did come in under budget, around $103,712. The only other thing I would like to note in regards to the general fund, we will likely still have a couple receivables that come in, possibly an expense or two before we have our financial statement audit in March. So these aren't final. That'll be final once the auditors come, and issue their final report.
I make a motion to accept and place on file.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. 5B, authorization and approve transfer of funds within each department to comply with the Government Accounting Standards Board, GASB / Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, GAAP 2023. Sabrina?
Thank you. So next in your packet, starting on page 25, this report we do every year to essentially move budget dollars within each fund. So if you take a look at, for example, the Police and Fire Commission, which is the second one on page 25. They went over in transcription contractual, but copy usage and paper was under. So essentially, I'm moving budget dollars in between those funds. So therefore, it doesn't look like we went over budget in that fund. So what I'm asking for approval for are these first, there are 3 columns at the end, and this section is looking at approval for the interdepartment transfers. All of the other transfers where we move from one department to another is via resolution later on in the budget, later on in the meeting.
I'll move to approve the interdepartment transfers as outlined on page 25 of the agenda packet.
I
I'll second.
Okay. Any
Wait,
discussion?
The only thing that, if I could add, Chair, is that it does go from page 25 to 45. I presume you're approving all of them.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 6, 2024 financing plan presentation by Bradley Vicat from Baird. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
All right, thank you. I'll walk through the presentation pack that was included in your agenda and answer any questions. This is the financing to fund the city's capital improvement program for 2024. So on the first page of the presentation, I've got a summary of really 2 debt issuance that you're considering. First, on the left-hand side of this page, there's a general obligation corporate purpose bond. That issue size is $3,465,000. Now, this bond is going to fund all of the capital projects in the city's CIP, with the exception of a few projects that are not eligible for bonding. And those would be funded by a state trust fund loan that's shown on the right-hand side of the page. Those are things like building improvements, some solar work for City Hall, and police vehicles. With the bond issue, we have a maturity structure of October 1st of 2025, and then annual maturities through 2041. What I want to point out here is we're following the practice that the city set last year. We're trying to shorten the total repayment of the city's long-term debt. So you have here an 18-year repayment period. Historically, up until last year, the city had repaid its long-term debt over a 20-year period. Our longer term goal is really to get this even a little bit shorter in the coming years without putting an undue burden on the tax levy. So we've got a first interest, which will be paid on October 1st this year, a call feature beginning on October 1st of 2031. That's the call feature means that's the date on which the city can prepay this debt, either with funds on hand or refinance with another debt issue, but that's at the city's option. And the estimated rate for the bonds, 3.77%. On the state trust fund loan, we have a much shorter repayment because we don't want the loan to be outstanding longer than the useful life of the assets. And primarily that's the police vehicles in this case. So we have this repaid over a 5-year period. I'm showing the interest rate at 6.25%. The state just lowered their rates. I think it was last week. So that issue will be at 6%. So a little lower than the 6.25%. In terms of a timeline with the committee's authorization tonight, this will go in front of the full council at the February 13th meeting. Baird, along with city staff, will continue to take steps to bring this issue to market. We'll complete the official statement, which is the disclosure document for the city. We'll market these obligations to underwriters nationwide. We're going to secure a bond rating from Moody's Investor Service. And then we'll finalize interest rates. We'll take bids from underwriters up until March 12th. And it's the evening of March 12th, council would act on the award resolution, which finalizes the rates and the terms that awards the bonds to the underwriter. The closing date is scheduled for April 1st. That's the date the funds will be wired to the city. The state trust fund loan may follow a slightly different timeline, but roughly the same in terms of getting the funds in early spring. I've got a detailed repayment schedule on the following page. The boxed in area shows the principal and interest amortization of the bond issue. Left of that is the existing debt service payments of the city. Those are obligations already approved, already in place. We include those because you never want to look at any financing in isolation. We want to take into consideration the existing obligations of the city and then potential future obligations. And those future obligations are towards the right-hand side of this page. We've got placeholders here for the community center, a placeholder for future annual financings to get to what I call the combined debt service. That would be the existing, this year's debt issue, plus those hypothetical future. And it's important, I want to stress that these future financings you're not taking action tonight to approve any of those. All of those would come back for separate consideration at the time of issuance. They're really here for planning purposes. So on the combined debt service that's supported by tax levy would increase in 2025, and you'll see there's a couple of upward steps, 26 and thereafter, and that's a reflection of these future borrowings that we're including. And then there is a small component of this bond issue that's going to be supported by the water system. I've included the $290,000 amortization schedule of that issuance. It's repaid over the same time period as the longer term bonds. Certainly could go out 2 more years with this issuance because it is supported by the enterprise revenue. But for marketing purposes, it would be pretty awkward to have very small principal payments in the final 2 years of an issue after the longer term bond is paid off. It might actually discourage some investors. So we've matched the amortization structure of the capital that's levy supported and then the capital funds that's supported by the water system. So overall, the tone of the market is positive. You know, rates really peaked in late October, early November of last year. And since the new year have really trended down. We've seen a much more stable market in the last month or so than we've had in November, December of last year. So good a time as any to go ahead and issue bonds to fund the projects of the city. I'd be glad to go into more detail or answer any questions.
Okay, it's a motion to accept and place on file. Okay, and if anyone has questions,
That's very thorough. Thank you.
okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sabrina, did you have any comments or anything? Rick, anything? Okay, great. Okay, item number 7, City of Onalaska. Okay, I'm sorry.
Did you make a motion?
I made a motion.
Okay, I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The item number 6 passes. Okay, item number 7, City of Onalaska 2024 Capital Budgets, General Obligation Corporation Purpose Bonds. 7A is Resolution 2-2024, initial resolution authorizing $2,190,000 general obligation funds for street improvement projects. Is there a motion?
Oh, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Item number 7A passes. Item number 7B, Resolution 3-2024. Initial resolution authorizing 455,000 general obligation bond for park and public grounds projects.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion on this? Sabrina?
I would just add, these items that are listed as resolutions, these follow what we approved at Board of Public Works and what got approved at Common Council, just so you know what you're approving, just the separate resolutions.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion 7B passes. Item number 7C, Resolution 4-2024, initial resolution authorizing $500,000 general obligation bonds for equipment of the fire department.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion passes. Item number 7D, Resolution 5-2024, initial resolution authorizing $30,000 general obligation bonds for parking lot projects.
I'll move to approve resolution 5-2024.
I'll second again.
Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion passes. Item number 7E, Resolution 6-2024, initial resolution authorizing $290,000 general obligation funds for water system projects.
I move to approve 6-20, resolution 6-2024.
Second.
Okay, any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion 7E passes. Item number 8, Resolution 7-2024, resolution directing publication of notice to electors relating to bond issues. Sabrina, do you have anything?
I would just add, this is, a normal resolution that we have every year. This is just our resolution to be able to, notify, individuals, that we are borrowing these dollars. So once this gets approved, then we can send it to the newspaper to, get that out to the public.
Okay. I make a motion to approve resolution 7-2024.
I'll second.
Any further discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, and item number 8, resolution 7-2024 passes. Item number 9, resolution providing for the sale of not to exceed $3,465,000 general obligation corporate purpose bonds. Sabrina?
Again, also a normal resolution when we do the borrowing. This is just the full resolution with the full amount of the general obligation bonds.
I will move to approve resolution 8-2024.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 10, resolution 9-2024, resolution to transfer from 2023 general fund budget to the special revenue fund equipment replacement fund. Sabrina?
Thank you, Chair. So in your packets tonight, starting on page 60, is Resolution 9-2024. This resolution, thankfully, we've been able to do several years. What we're doing is moving some of the surplus dollars from the operating budget from the general fund into the equipment replacement fund. The equipment replacement fund is what we use for different projects within the city. So it's a good place to put dollars when we have projects that arise. We use equipment replacement. We kind of use it in tandem when we're doing the CIP budget every year. So I am recommending that we transfer $700,000 of the $1.3 million surplus that we have. And some of the reasoning behind that, again, because we do use that fund on a regular basis. The reason I'm recommending such a large dollar amount with the 700,000, this year we are short-term borrowing for almost $700,000. This is something we could look at in 2025 when working on, or in 2024 for the 2025 CIP. That maybe instead of short-term borrowing, we might use some of this surplus. If 2024 is looking like a good year, we could do that. We could also use this, some of those funds to go towards the community center project or whatever that may be. But by moving them to equipment replacement, it's just a good place for them to sit, in my opinion.
To get discussion going, I will go ahead and move to approve Resolution 9-2024.
And I'll second.
Okay, just Alder Knott.
Yeah, so this $700,000, is that part of the approximate 1.1 million that is in surplus this year?
Yes, so instead of the 1.3 million staying in the general fund, 700,000 of it would go to equipment replacement. And then the remaining surplus would stay in the general fund and go to the general fund reserves, which helps us keep that strong bond rating by adding to our reserves.
So I know you and I kind of discussed this briefly when we were talking earlier when I was going through the budget stuff with you. Is it not, I guess, prudent to take some of that and maybe apply to the 2024 budget, specifically the short-term borrowing? And where I'm looking at is the short-term borrowing interest rates this year are, of course, the highest we've had within the last 5 years of cycle, if you will. And we also know that we exceeded the recommended cap from the finance director during this capital improvement budget sequence by about $250,000. So I'm wondering if we spend some of that this year to make up for that overage on expenditures, if you will, since we also now have an overage on revenues, and eliminate what will probably be our highest interest debt with the fact, well, it's not a fact, the impression that a lot of folks in the financial world seem to be writing about that interest rates may be coming down in the future. So if that is indeed the case, this year's short-term borrowing is going to be the highest interest rate borrowing we have in the foreseeable future, if that is indeed a proper assumption. I have no problem bringing a significant portion forward, into the general fund as well, or excuse me, into the equipment replacement fund as well. I mean, I guess I'm wondering what would be prudent here. We have a total of 668,257 in the state trust fund borrowing at what has now been told is 6.0%. Would it not be prudent to at least do some of that, if not even all of it? I don't know what that answer would be without further discussion. But, and that again is especially true when you consider that we did break the recommended cap this year, and we could actually bring things kind of more clean and in alignment. Oh, Sabrina, what do you think?
The main reason why I didn't make that recommendation at this point is just because we already have kind of a financing plan in order. If that is the will of the committee and the council, I could definitely talk to Brad with, instead of short-term borrowing, to use our surplus towards that. We could do that.
If
Hold or not.
that's the case, that this plan is, kind of set, and I know he'd mentioned a deadline coming up here too. Would you not just go forward with the plan and then just pay it off?
We could.
Okay. Yeah.
We could see how 2024, how we end in 2024. We'll have one interest payment, likely in 2024. And if we have another good year in 2024, we could pay it off.
Yeah, I guess my main concern, and then I'll be done, is I know that now coming up on almost 3 years ago, we started down a path where I think we were really prudent that this city used its ARPA funds to completely avoid short-term borrowing. And so for 2 years, we had no short-term borrowing, which of course is on that 5-year cycle. If we were to somehow at least reduce, if not eliminate this year's, that would be a third year. We'd really be getting close to not having any higher interest short-term borrowing at all in this city. And I think that would free up some funds in the future without maybe even having to do any short-term borrowing. So.
Sean, do you have any comments?
No, I think what Steve's saying makes a lot of sense. So yeah, let's see what we can do with that. And if it works, great.
I'm getting the sense that maybe, we might need some more staff input before
Right.
we arrive at a dollar figure of doing this or how we do it. So I'm fine with voting on this as is, but when it comes to the common council, can we, of course, put this on the non-consent agenda and then, I think it is anyway as a resolution.
Yeah, all the resolutions.
Yeah, so, but maybe have more details available then to have a more robust discussion with the full council.
Can I just add, there's just one thing that you said that I just want to make sure we clarify. So this doesn't really free up dollars, if we pay off our short-term borrowing. It doesn't free up dollars. What it does is bring the mill rate down. So it doesn't give us more dollars to be able to spend for operating. So when we do our yearly levy limit worksheet, we have our operating bucket, which we can usually only increase by net new construction. And then we have our borrowing bucket. And short-term borrowing is in the borrowing bucket. So essentially what it means is in the future, if we don't short-term borrow, then the mill rate stays lower for our borrowing piece of the levy. So I just want to make sure that is clear, that it doesn't really doesn't give us more dollars to use for operating purposes. Whereas putting it in equipment replacement puts dollars into equipment replacement that we can use in the future, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Hold or not.
Yeah, I didn't even consider the mill rate implication, and I guess I view that as a positive for the citizens.
Oh, yes.
But I guess what I'm thinking when I'm saying saving money is we wouldn't be paying the interest rate. So I'm wondering how that's not a saving of money.
It is. It is saving, and it is saving people on the mill rate, which is a positive thing. Absolutely. I'm just saying that it doesn't give us more dollars in our operating budget
Got it.
because they're two different buckets. The operating budget, we can only increase by the net new construction.
Yeah.
Where borrowing, we could increase that up to our levy limit restriction, which we would never do. But
And again, I think I need more information too. That's why I'm saying I'm willing to approve this as is and let it go forward to common council and get more. And maybe the answer is don't change anything. Maybe the answer is pay off all of the short-term borrowing as soon as is feasible for 2024. Maybe the answer is somewhere in between. I don't know right now, but I'd like to have more discussion on it next week if we could. Yeah.
Right. Diane?
Thank you, Chair. So Sabrina, I just have one quick question, as what Alder Knott is possibly suggesting and or proposing. When Brad goes ahead and crunches his numbers and everything, are we paying, our fee is based on what let me back up. What is his fee based on? Because my concern is if we go, wouldn't our fee be less if we didn't borrow it to begin with?
not by much.
Okay, well, and I wasn't sure. Okay,
I think it's all encompassed in the borrowing in total.
okay. Because I know in the past we've had that discussion.
Mm.
year or two ago was like maybe about $50,000, I think is what we paid.
Yeah,
Package.
but yeah, because we pay for Moody's, we pay for bond counsel, and then we also pay for Bayard to help us through the process.
Okay,
We pay
but-
for all
but
three.
you're thinking.
It
initially-
wouldn't be a large dollar
Okay,
figure.
it's
And
negligible.
what we do is we include that cost in the borrowing.
Okay,
So it's not something we pay out of pocket. Well, we do. It's just part of the full bonding.
okay. I was just thinking that if we had a choice of paying it now versus later, I just want to make sure that we didn't get caught up and go, we could have saved that much more, but if it's negligible in the bigger picture, thank you.
Good question.
Okay. Any further discussion? And Sabrina, you're comfortable with the motion as stated?
It says.
It's, yeah, he just made the motion to approve it. So I think you just have to vote on it.
And we did have a second, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, and resolution -9-2024 passes. Item number 11, resolution 10-2024, resolution to transfer to/from various departments in the 2023 general fund budget. Sabrina?
Thank you. So next in your packet, starting on page 61, is Resolution 10-2024. This resolution also standard, this is again for government accounting standards and the government accounting and GAAP, government accounting principles, or generally accepted accounting principles. So on page 61, the top of the page are items that came in under budget. And essentially, I'm moving those dollars to items that at the bottom of the page are items that went over budget. So I'm just moving dollars within the general fund for, again, the generally accepted accounting principles and government accounting standards board.
I'll move to approve resolution 10-2024.
Second.
Discussion. I had a couple of things when you and I talked, Sabrina, we had looked at on the top of the page, the sick leave payout. And then at the bottom of the page, the salaries and the insurance. Can you go over those dollar amounts?
Yep, absolutely. So if you take a look at the top of the page, when budgeting the city administrator salary, I budgeted essentially our interim's salary was budgeted in legal, but then we charged her to the city administrator. So that's why it looks like it went over budget so much. So that's why you see legal and the city administrator for salaries. Then also up at the top, the sick leave payout. So for 2024, we actually increased that number quite substantially to account for individuals who do retire from the city of Onalaska who are WRS eligible to retire. We do pay them out their sick banks. So I budget a dollar amount in our sick leave payout, and then essentially I move those dollars into different departments that had people who did leave the city where we had to pay a sick leave payout. So that's why you see that. We had a retirement in police, in street, in the cemetery, like we had lots of retirements in 2023 and several already in 2024.
Thank you. Any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, motion passes. For resolution 10-2024. Number 12, resolution 11-2024, resolution to transfer from the 2023 general fund budget to the special revenue funds / special projects. Sabrina?
Thank you. So next in your packet on page 63 is resolution 11-2024. This resolution has been done as far as I looked back probably 8 years ago, when I first started, in 2021. Every year, if there's a surplus, the general fund does give $3,500, to the DARE program. So that's what this is. That's what this resolution is doing.
I'll move to approve.
Second,
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
aye.
Aye. Motion, resolution dash 11-2024 passes. Item number 13, designate funds in the equipment replacement fund. Sabrina?
Thank you. On page 64, the city attorney Amanda Jackson, wrote a memo at my request. There was some items in the equipment replacement fund that were budgeted for 2023 that were not completed. We did talk about this last year as well for items from 2022 that we carried forward to 2023. One of the things was wayfinding signage, which we had budgeted $50,000 for. There's just been kind of a delay, and also we've been doing a lot of work to make sure we get the proper signage, make sure it's ADA compliant and so forth. So I'm requesting on Amanda's behalf that we carry forward those funds to 2024. Also with the legal software as well, that was budgeted.
Move to approve the designation of funds in the equipment replacement fund as listed on the January 31st, 2024 memo, item number 13 on our agenda.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have passed the designate fund in the equipment replacement fund item. Item number 14, designated funds for outstanding assessments. Sabrina?
Thank you. So next in your packets on page 65 is a memo regarding designating funds for outstanding assessments. So we still have 3 big box retail stores in litigation. Essentially, the way this works is the city has to pay all of our attorney fees. And if, for example, one of the 3 box stores were to win and it would say that the assessment was not correct, we would have to pay them back their property taxes for not 1 year, but now 2 years. So we have to upfront that cost to them. Eventually, we would get paid back from the other municipalities and get paid back from the state. But
For their
upfront, we would
portion.
have to,
Just for their portion, so there would still be our portion.
correct, but we would get our portion from the state.
Okay.
So we would have to pay them right away. So having these dollars set aside for the legal costs and that upfront cost, if we were to lose, it's just beneficial to have these dollars sitting aside. So essentially what we do is instead of putting it to our regular fund balance, we just designate it in case we need it in the general fund. So that's what I'm asking. We did do $100,000 at the end of 2022. And I'm just asking that we do that for 2023 as well.
I'll make a motion to approve the designation of $100,000 in account 100-34217 illegal assessments.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Yeah,
Or not?
I just want to say, I think this is especially prudent.
Mhm.
And if we don't need it, then it'll still be there for some future use anyways.
Yeah, I concur with that completely, that it is just proactive on our part to do this. Any
Me
further
too.
discussions? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, so item number 14, designate funds for outstanding assessments has been passed. Item number 15, Gunderson Health Systems parking ramp. Item A, fourth quarter and annual for 2023. Sabrina?
Thank you. Next in your packet on page 66 is the parking ramp operating cost. This is pretty standard. Gunderson provides this to us on a quarterly basis. You can see our cost per quarter is $1,250. And then above that, they list what their total costs were throughout the year. So we pay a portion of those costs for the operating. This agreement does go through 2028. So we do have a few years left on, or the bonding and the agreement of us paying for part of the maintenance.
It's just for information only, right? I mean,
I think we usually approve and place on file.
move to place, approve and place and file.
Second,
Okay, any further discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
aye.
Item number 15, the Gunderson Health Systems parking ramp, fourth quarter annual has been approved and placed on file. Item number 16, purchasing matrix update. Sabrina or Amanda?
Do you want me to start or do you?
You can start if you want.
So one of the things that was tasked to me when I started here at the city was to take a look at our policies and procedures, as well as this purchasing matrix that sits in front of you. It's been a whirlwind 2.5 years. But one of the things that I think does need to be addressed is the purchasing matrix that is before you. Our current policy requires that we have to have an RFP for anything over $15,000, which is not a lot of money, from when, even the time when they originally created this purchase matrix. So I think that's probably the biggest piece for me. There's also a lot of, just some clarifying items that are in the purchase order and place order area, that I think are very prudent to be changed. We did increase the dollar figures as well. That's listed on page 68. So, 69. So right now, anything over $1,000, I sign off on all of those purchase orders, which is not an issue by any means on my behalf. But $1,000 doesn't buy you what it used to. So I think the request is that we would increase that to $2,500, which you see that at the top of the purchasing policy matrix. The other notes that I'd like to just make, down in the purchase order and place order, we note there per finance. We are looking at a new ERP system where staff would be able to not have to get a purchase order for every single item. So for example, if we needed a new light for the city hall chambers right now, you would have to get a purchase order for that. Even if it was $15, you would get a purchase order the way our ERP system works. Our new ERP system hopefully will have the capability where we are able to put in an item that would be considered an AP instead of just a purchase order. Like I have a requisition, an AP requisition, because I want to buy this $15 item. So that's why we stated per finance, because hopefully with the new ERP system, we'd be able to change our policies a little bit to where you wouldn't have to get a purchase order to buy something that's $15, for example. So that's kind of what we're getting at there. Otherwise, it's just a lot of verbiage items that are changed. And I know Amanda probably wants to talk a little bit more about the RFP items. So I'll turn it over to Amanda.
Yeah, I think as, Sabrina had mentioned, really RFPs are sort of our big ticket items, and more often than not, big ticket service type contracts. Sometimes they're also for like equipment and purchases. For instance, playground equipment would be a large ticket RFP type item. But that, number at 15,000, really doesn't capture that. It's a lot of like more, routine, even, depending on what we're getting in addition, or an add-on to a vehicle could run us 15,000. Like, we don't need to do an RFP for that. And so we were just seeing more of that. Another change we made was with respect to, you'll notice that really the last column didn't change because the very last column follows public construction state bidding requirements. So we didn't change that, but we did remove the requirement to do a class 1 notice for those those regular non-public construction RFPs. And part of that was because papers aren't quite what they used to be. They're not printing daily anymore. We're not necessarily getting business from putting our RFPs in the paper. And so we were expending, a couple $100 to publish RFPs, to not really get any value back. So much of it's digital now that we did update that, we would put all of our RFPs on the city website, and then one or more of the following, we would post them on the league has a specific part of their site dedicated for public RFPs. We do often direct send them to vendors that we're aware of. And then sometimes, depending on what we're buying, there are vendor portals that come in handy, that we use. And so in most cases, we probably would actually do multiple of these, but at a minimum, we would look for putting it on the city website and doing at least one of those. And then removing the requirement that we would post it in the newspaper. Otherwise, I think Sabrina highlighted most of the other changes. For those of you that may remember, we originally published this, I think, passed it like early 2020, 2021. It would have been just before Sabrina started. And we probably, even with this, still get a significant amount of questions as it relates to purchasing, but this really helps like our staff. It also helps, as department heads and, Sabrina and I especially get a lot of questions related to purchasing. It's really nice to have this to be able to bring it out and be like, okay, well, let's look at this and follow the columns. And so, but when Fred and I and the rest of the department heads, worked on this in a few years ago, it was just a really novel idea, right? And so we set some numbers based on what some other municipalities did. And I think we're just finding that stuff costs so much more these days. Some of those numbers just were no longer working.
Just to clarify, if I could, Leanne.
Sure.
So what I'm understanding, what you're asking for is moving the small purchase limit from 1K to 2.5K and the mandatory RFP process to be greater than 25K. That's basically the conclusion out of all.
Those are the two major changes. Yeah. So all of those things in red, are updates. Some of them are really just clarifications, not necessarily changes. Some of them are changes. So we did slide over the major one being that dollar amount being to 2,500. And then that renewal, that kind of middle column being 25 to 50 instead of it used to be 15.
Got it.
Aldernaut?
Yeah, so I am assuming, obviously, all these constraints are put on in order to have some review and oversight. I'm assuming that we still have oversight and audits and what have you as the year progresses anyway. So this is just to speed up purchases and contracts and things of that nature. We would still have just as much oversight, correct?
In general, yeah. On that like lower amount, that under 2,500, there's a little bit less oversight. So shifting that from 1,000 to 2,500 is a little bit, less oversight of those purchases under 2,500. But that sort of goes back to what we used to be able to buy for $800. We can't buy for $800. And so when you start to get into requiring bid tabulations to go buy $1,000 worth of paint, we're slowing staff down. And so this is expediting stuff, at a level where we don't feel like they necessarily need quite as in-depth of a review at under $2,500.
But there still is review. Where I'm
Yeah,
going
it's
with,
still going into Tyler and it's still
Yeah.
going through, yeah.
Because this protects everybody. I know, as an anecdote, maybe 3 years ago, I was asked to take over a financial project, which I immediately said, I don't know if I'm the best qualified person for that, but if you were actually going to tell me this individual that I'm going to do that, then I want to have an end of year independent third party audit because I want everyone to know that Steve did nothing wrong. So it protects all parties to make sure that there's this oversight. So the bottom line is there still is review. It's just quicker and a little less.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
If I could just add, so essentially what this would do is when someone asks for a purchase order, right now, over $1,000, I sign off on them. So essentially now I would only sign off the 2,500 ones. But before each council meeting and before any check leaves the city of Onalaska, I review. And I'm not the only one that reviews. Karen also makes sure there's an invoice before a check goes out and so forth. So there would be a little less review in regards to the purchase order itself, but before a check goes out the door, there are multiple eyes on that. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
I don't remember if there was actually a motion.
There has not been.
Okay.
I will go ahead and move to approve these changes.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Rick, did you have anything I know that this actually started prior to you coming and then you were part of the process after you came. So I didn't know if you had anything to add to.
Correct. No, I was involved in some discussions after I got here as well too, and we've gone over those even more recently. I mean, just an FYI, I would review or sign purchase orders that were $5,000 or more. This will change it to $10,000 or more. Kind of goes in line with kind of moving those numbers along the way too. So, but no, after reviewing and giving any input, I think it makes sense.
Okay. Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, number 16, the purchasing matrix update has passed. And that ends the finance piece of the meeting. Now moving on to personnel. Number 17 is recruitment update from Human Resource Director Amy Franzen. Amy?
Good evening. So as you can see before you, a number of updates in our regular hiring for the month of January. We filled 6 regular positions as noted on the memo before you, and then we've got a number of positions underway as well. One thing that's going to look a little bit different this year, we added just a quick additional highlights for the month instead of it being a recruitment update, which it mostly is, just also updating a few other things going on in the realm of personnel. So, and with that, we did update our seasonal job postings. We also sent out individual notices on all of the scheduled changes for 2024 in terms of pay and benefits, and then also posted our OSHA 300 log as required to do as well, and all of the reporting that goes along with that.
Okay. Any questions for Amy? Okay.
Good news.
All right. Item number 18, Human Resource Annual Report for 2023. Amy?
All right, now I know this is a long document before you. If it's all the same, I'll just go ahead and kind of highlight each of these sections. Certainly, if you want more information, I'm readily here to provide that as well. But here's just a quick overview of what Human Resources does for the city. In addition to recruitment, we've got a whole other list of things as well. Some of the areas of importance, I think most noteworthy for 2023, we had greater hiring demands, as you know, from the monthly updates of what we've been going through with added positions and also an increase in our separations for the city as well. We did have the new staff training day that we coordinated as well. And then also we had 100% of changes in our health insurance due to changes during our open enrollment process. So that resulted in a lot of entry for that as well. And we also had a vacancy within the Human Resources Department for nearly 3 months as well. So those were sort of the big highlights for the year. Our current staff, myself, Joanne Kinsler, and then we do have a part-time HR assistant that is scheduled to start at the end of the month. So looking forward to that.
And this, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All do not?
I guess, a comment and a question. So when I'm looking at the claims, well, it's tough. I see what if I were to chart this out with a trend line, it would be an upward trend. However, I also understand that in the big scheme of things, our city staff, population is still fairly small. So, you know, it could very well be statistically insignificant anyway. Just take a look at that. I don't know if there's anything, I guess probably comments more towards Rick, if there's anything we can do more for maybe some safety training and things like that to get those down. But again, I understand things happen. I understand that numbers can be deceiving. All right. We have a small population, although it is, you know, would clearly be an upward trend line. Doesn't mean anything. I don't know. You know, it's not like we have 10,000 people to compare it to on a year-to-year basis. So, right. And then the last thing is, do we know what our average vacancy rate was for throughout the year?
So our turnover rate was 14%.
Yeah, but
Bill-
that's turnover. Does that include vacancies or is that just people leaving?
So those are separations and those are retiree, you know, people that retire, resign, or are terminated from the city. So that's our total separations. So what we did, I mean, we had 11 positions filled in 2023. 6 new positions added. We had 4 employees transferred to different positions, and then we had 5 positions that were filled from the previous year. So that ended up with our 26 total filled regular positions for the year.
Right.
Okay, yeah, when I sat down with Amy, I asked her to give us a little bit more detail when she does the annual report so that we have a better understanding that HR is not just recruitment.
Yeah.
And HR touches many different aspects of it. So I thank you for doing that. I think it was
Absolutely.
very helpful.
Hey,
Just,
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's
Yes,
right.
Rick.
If you don't mind. I mean, Steve, I just wanted to address to one of the topics you brought up regarding the safety. Ironically, CIVMIC was here today. We had not only had our safety meeting, but also went over some training opportunities that staff can have in the upcoming year. And I know like there are certain departments that have regular trainings that they do every year, and then we look at what additional ones we can do. So we do that quite regularly. As a city overall, quite honestly, we actually are quite low when it comes to the claims that we do have based on what the information has been provided. But I understand what you say. There is a bit of a trend, and they acknowledge that we are still in a good position. But we are looking at some other additional opportunities that we can do, and I'll be coming to council here, in the next month or two, just with some updates and kind of some plans moving forward.
Yes.
And yeah, and again, I do understand numbers can be deceiving, for instance, that this last year with that 123K.
Mhm.
I don't want details here, of course, it would be totally inappropriate, but just where I'm going with this is that could be one incident that just happened to be really expensive,
Sure.
or it could be 18 incidents that all were almost the same. It's like, we got an issue, so.
Sure.
But we may not have an issue. If it was just one really unfortunate thing that happened that was a one-off, then,
Mhm.
I'm just kind of, highlighting it a bit. I'm not overly concerned at this point, but
Certainly. No, I'm glad you brought it up. I just wanted to let you know we are certainly working on it. So,
yeah,
We need a
probably just
kept
file.
in place on file or
And I'll make a motion to place on file.
second.
And I'll-
Okay. All those, I'm sorry, Sabrina.
No, that's okay. If I could just add in regards to workers' comp, our rate did go up this year as well. So they did do an audit. They do a regular audit every couple of years, and our rate did go up this year as well. So
Okay.
with the increase in claims over the years, that's likely part of it, but also employee wage and categories and things of that nature can adjust our rates. So we did see an increase. You would see that if you looked at the general fund. I just wanted to add that.
If I could just
Yes,
add to
Amy.
it too. So with our modification rating being below 1, I mean, that equates to around $25,000 in premium savings. So it did have a significant savings because we are still considered low And we have a good rating in that respect. So it does equate to dollars. And again, all of those things that we do, the training, the getting employees back to work as soon as we can, policies and all of that, I mean, does help in keeping that down as well. So.
That's all good information to have. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, there has been a motion to accept and place on file. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, the annual report passes. Number 19, adjournment. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Go ahead, Sean.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Thanks, Steve.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 We are adjourned at 7:17. 7:17? 7:15, I'm sorry. And thank you.
Have an awesome night, everybody.
Thank you, Sean, for making it's good. It's a wonderful effort to get on.
Absolutely. See you all soon.